Hi everybody, and welcome to Zero to Hero, taking Oracle Forms from the back office to mobile. So firstly, I want to thank you, Ronald, Director of Product Management for Oracle Mobile, for joining us. Such an incredible talent, and he's been in the Oracle world for longer than I can remember. I mean, training me way back when in Oracle Forms and mobility and ADF and all the rest. So always a big supporter of the Oracle developer. And what was really interesting to me is after Oracle Open World, so many people were asking for his slides and asking where they could view the Oracle Open World session, that we thought it might be a great idea to actually replay the Oracle Open World session for the people who maybe missed it, to really help relay the message to anybody who may want to share in it. So thank you so much, Grant, for joining us. Of course, during the session, there is actually a chat window and a questions window, so feel free to shoot any of your questions to that window. And then if you'd like, at any point, we're going to be able to answer questions at the end as well. Grant, thanks again for joining us, and I will leave it to you to take it from here.
Great, thanks very much, Mia, and thanks for everybody for joining. I know everybody's very busy and it takes a little bit of time out your day, but over the next maybe 30 minutes or so, I just want to give you an insight into something that we were really excited about in Oracle, and obviously working with Mia, which was this whole opportunity of modernizing from forms. And as Mia said, my background in the 20 years or so I've been in Oracle has been quite heavily involved with Oracle Forms. I was global technical lead in support for Oracle Forms, and then moved into Forms product management, and where I run the Forms product management team. And then more recently I've been involved in the mobile product management side of things. So I think I've got a foot in both camps when it looks at Oracle Forms and also mobile as well. So over the next, as I say, 30 minutes or so, we'll not bore you too much with slides, but I really wanted to just show you what's possible here, and some of the great stuff that we're doing with AuraPlayer, and lots of times for questions if you would like. So the first thing is really just to talk about why you might be engaging mobile, while mobile might be interesting to you, generally. And then we'll look at, well, what potentially could you do with your investment in Forms? What's the art of the possible? And if you have seen this vision of where you could go with mobile, well, how do you technically do it? And of course, I think it's great to know that you're not the only one. We've worked with a number of customers, so we'll talk a little bit about some of the customers that we've been working with and successful with as well. So the first thing is the enterprise drive to mobility. Now, quite often when I give these presentations and talk about mobile, we'll put up a statistics from Gartner or Forrester that talks about the percentage of enterprise businesses that are moving towards mobile and mobile development, or even socially, how often we pick up our phone or lift our phone, or how much of our life we spend, close to our mobile devices. But I think the following picture kind of makes the case, at least in our day-to-day social. And I kind of joke that when I show this presentation, this lady at the front, she's the Forms developer. Everybody else, I think, understands. I think we all understand in our day-to-day lives that mobile, music, photographs, social apps, ordering a taxi, ordering a pizza, even dating, whatever it could be, we're now much more moving towards mobile first, and that's our first channel of communications through mobile. So the case, I think we all recognize, has been made for mobile in our day-to-day lives, but the question I think remains is, has that case been made for business or enterprise? And I think we're in the situation where businesses are generally speaking lagging behind the commercial world and where we are with our adoption and our use of mobile. Now, the question arises then, well, if we're looking at the potential, the possibilities, what kind of applications, or what are we looking at when we talk about mobilizing our business? And the question goes, well, let's look at how we have modernized. Why should time management be a function that just when you walk into the office that you log your time, log out. Generally speaking, something like time management is actually more complex than simply the point you walk into the office or the point you leave the office. But there again, why should time management even be something that is tied to the desktop? I mean, why can't we look at making these business functions, and I use the example of time management, it could be anything, it could be tracking orders, it could be tracking a work list or whatever it may be. Why does that have to be tied to the desktop? We have much higher expectations personally of doing business on the move, that we're always connected and we can do these actions wherever we are, not necessarily tied to the desktop. And there's a number of driving factors to this. I think there's a generational element to it, that people have expectations of being able to access functionality or business functions from mobile devices. I think it's also true that using mobile applications, you probably can give a more relevant experience, because you can drive mobile content that is specific to a person based even where they are, based on their location or what they're interacting with or what they're near. So you can actually drive a much more tailored experience with mobile than you can with web. And quite often I think the whole experience that you have with mobile apps now is often better, more engaging than typically we have with desktop applications. So I think if we recognize that the case has been made that yes, we are using mobile devices in our day-to-day lives, it makes sense to bring some business functions out there to our employees or our customers or our partners, wherever it might be. So what's the art of the possible? What could we do? What technically could we do? Now, when I'm talking to Forms audience and I talk about the art of the possible, bringing Forms to mobile, I want to make it very clear that we're not saying that a mobile application or a Forms application that you're familiar with, as we see on the screen here, very typical Forms application, should go as is on a mobile device. I mean, that doesn't make sense. We all know that Forms applications are very rich, very data intensive, huge numbers of fields, multi-row blocks. We have tab canvases, and a typical Forms application will be hundreds and hundreds of FMB files. So what we're not saying take that application and try to port it or try to expose it to a mobile device. But if you look at any mobile application, you can see there are micro use cases. So we might have an HR system, and that HR system allows us to book vacation, amongst many other things. Well, rather than taking that whole HR app and exposing it in a mobile device, why can't we look at elements, small use cases or business functions or microprocesses that are part of that application, but expose them in mobile devices that's much more useful to the user. So booking a holiday now becomes a simple action, a 2-minute action on a mobile device, rather than sending a request to HR department and that gets input into the Forms applications. So we're not talking about taking applications as is and porting the device. We're looking at useful use cases that make sense or would really work in a mobile environment, and somehow lifting out or exposing those processes through mobile. And as I said, the holiday examples are, I think, a good example in that we all understand this. You know, if you look at booking vacation, something we all lucky enough to do in business at some point in our working year, it's actually quite simple. What do you do? You have a start date, an end date, or a duration. You might have to put in a reason or something, and then you submit and you kick off a process. Now, that really is one of those examples that is very quick. It could be surfaced on a mobile device so that you can book it at any time. You don't have to be at your desk booking holiday. It could be at the point you're at the travel agent and you book a vacation that you can then put in your holiday request. So we're looking at bringing up this micro use case into mobile. Now, we all know that booking a holiday, for example, goes through a whole approvals process, and that's still something which is maybe quite a complex process. You have to check what vacation you've got, or it has to go through an approvals. We still want to be able to trigger that same logic. So ideally what we're saying is we want to expose the interaction element of our current forms application in a completely new way, as we're showing in the screen here, but we still want to have the same business logic executing at the back end, because essentially booking a holiday is exactly the same process. It goes through the same approvals, the same validation, but we just want to surface that on a mobile device in a way that's very convenient to our users. So that's what we'd like to do. Now, there are a number of challenges here that when we think about building mobile apps. Now, regardless if we're looking at forms as a source of business data or business logic or anything else, mobile app development has some particular challenges. Some of them might be new to us. I mean, the first is really that for a start, we have a very high level of user experience expectation from our users. They are used to apps working a particular way, particular gestures, and I think unlike maybe our desktop applications, we have a much more discerning user base. So we have to build a very engaging user experience. Given that we are building for mobile devices, which themselves are, let's face it, pretty powerful devices, we want to start using the features of that platform as well. You know, if we are capturing information, why can't we capture it in a picture? I mean, we've got an amazing camera on these devices. Why can't we capture pictures? Or we'd want to exploit pictures. Or features such as push notifications, or the fact that a mobile phone knows exactly where you are based on GPS. So couldn't we tailor the mobile app or the data based on where you are, or what you're near, or what boundaries within that you're within? We also have that challenge that mobile apps themselves might not always be online. We all know if you're doing some sort of email or something on the train, you go into a tunnel and you lose connection. So we want to look at, if you're building mobile apps, things like the ability to work offline. And having invested in building a mobile application, you want to prove to your business that it's been successful. So things like analytics, understanding how people use your mobile application is pretty key to understanding the success. The other hand in terms of our challenges are forms itself. So as you know, working with forms has this monolithic structure of UI and triggers, which is all conglomerated into one source file. So it becomes, we want to exploit or use that business logic that we've got in their forms triggers in a database, but we want to somehow surface it to a completely new mobile application. We have the challenge that forms applications have been around 10, 15, 20 plus years, and quite often the applications themselves are very complex. Not many people understand the forms application or how that business process actually works. So unpicking it to redevelop it or migrate it is actually quite a high risk step as well. And of course, any changes you make in your forms application obviously require retesting as well, and there's a risk associated with that. So having highlighted those challenges, how do I build modern mobile-first applications on top of Oracle Forms? And that's really the hub of what we're trying to talk about here today. So what if I told you that you could mobilize any of these core business processes that you're currently locked into Oracle Forms, but you wouldn't change a single line of code? And I think this is the key element we have to emphasize here. We're not talking about migration or rewriting. We are talking about reuse of all your forms, triggers, and logic, and database packages, and PL SQL, and tables and data without touching the code. You will not touch a line of the code there. And that's why I think we've got quite an exciting proposition here. Now, the key here is to understand how this works. And it's actually quite simple, and I think if we explain, and what I'll do in the next couple of slides here is explain how forms works and how the solution works, it then becomes, I think, quite clear why this is quite a low-risk opportunity for bringing forms onto mobile devices. So, if you're running forms on the web, you've been around forms for a while, you'll probably know that forms today is split into 3 tiers. You've got your database, you've got your Oracle Forms server, which is running on WebLogic, and that's where all your FMX files, all your triggers are. And the user sits in front of a browser, which is a Java applet. And what happens when the user types anything into the screen and hits a button in Forms is it will send that data down to the Forms server. The Forms server will see that data. It will execute any triggers associated with the button or the data that's been entered. It will execute any select statements or updates to the database. And then whatever resulting information needs to be painted back to the screen, it passes that back to Oracle Forms to update the UI. So the Forms UI, the user interface, is simply passing information down into Forms. Forms executes all the code associated with those changes and then throws back the new information that has to be painted in that screen. So that's the way Forms works today. Now, the way we get this nice solution with Mia's company AuraPlayer is that AuraPlayer provide a web service, a headless web service. When I say headless, I mean it doesn't have a UI. It's just a standard REST or SOAP web service. But it's an intelligent web service. It's a web service that knows how to talk to the Forms runtime. So what happens is the Forms runtime would get information from the AuraPlayer web service, and it doesn't know that it's not talking to the Forms UI. So if it gets data associated with what it thinks are fields, it will execute all the triggers, everything it did before, and pass information back up to this web service without necessarily understanding that it's not talking to a real user interface, it's just talking to a web service. Now the magic here is that because we have a web service without a UI, we can build our own mobile specific or mobile custom user interface that sits on top of that web service. So whereas before our Forms application might have had lots of text fields, lots of buttons, tab canvases, we can expose essentially the data that goes in and out of those fields and the actions associated with those buttons as web services. And then we can build our own user interface that talks to those web services just like any other web service. And we do this through Oracle Mobile Cloud Service, which gives us a number of advantages. So Oracle Mobile Cloud Service will allow us to shape our APIs so they're specific for mobile. It will allow us to mash up those APIs with other sources of information. So you might not just be pulling information from Forms, but a number of other back-end systems. It will manage things like security for you, analytics, working offline, location-based services, mobile-specific storage, all these things as well. So that, broadly speaking, is the solution we have. And you'll notice the important thing here is that everything from the Forms server, all the FMX files, and the database is not changed. Nothing has changed on the Forms server. You haven't touched a line of code. And in fact, what's quite smart here is that our new mobile UI, which we've built, can run in parallel with your existing desktop application. So you could still have your Forms or your employees who are using the Forms application in the back office as they are today, but you could now expose some new application functionality through mobile devices in parallel. They're both running against the same FMX files in the background, running the same code, running the same triggers, running the same PL SQL in the back. You haven't touched that code at all. So, to summarize there, we've got AuraPlayer, which is exposing whatever Forms fields you choose out through a web service. So again, we're not saying that your forms application with 500 forms and 50 fields per form, we're not exposing every single field through this web service. You would first of all choose what fields you want to expose in the web service, what fields and what methods, and then AuraPlayer would generate a web service specific to that use case. So out of your 500 forms and your 50 fields per form, you would pick the use case that you want to expose as mobile. You would essentially do a step called recording, where you pick the fields that you want to be input or output fields, and AuraPlayer will generate that web service for you. Having generated the web service, you can expose that through Oracle Mobile Cloud Service to get all the mobile specific features such as I said, offline notifications, security, etc. And you can build whatever mobile UI you want on top of that. And whilst we in Oracle have a number of mobile technologies for building the actual on-device applications, we have a JavaScript framework or library, we have a called Jet, we have a Java environment called Oracle Mobile Application Framework, but we also would support if you were using iOS or Android native development SDKs, or if you're using things like Sencha or Xamarin or JavaScript. Really, you can choose as well. And we actually also have an option within Mobile Cloud Service, which is a code-free solution for building mobile apps in the cloud. So you can actually assemble mobile apps based on these APIs you build and do it with no code and generate those down onto your mobile devices. Okay, so there is, I suppose, the technology behind it, how it actually works. So what are the steps you do? As I touched on there are basically 3 steps. The first thing is looking at your forms applications. If you were interested in what we're showing so far, the next step would be, from my forms application, what might I want to expose, or what would be a good use case to bring out and put onto mobile devices? What's something that people are maybe doing away from their desk, or could be better handled in putting the application to users' hands rather than a paper system, for example, which is then at a later date entered into the form system. So identify the business process you want. Create a storyboard or wireframes on how you think that should look. And you get that sign-off from your users. And that's a pretty simple upfront task. Having identified that use case and storyboard up and create a wireframe of your app, the next thing is, right, where am I getting my data from? Now we're saying that most of your data here we can say coming from forms, but it might not all be. But what you would do is you go into your forms application using the AuraPlayer recording tool. You would select the fields in your forms application that you want as input and output fields. That will then automatically generate your web service that will give you those input and output parameters. At that point, you can then call that API from Oracle Mobile Cloud Service via or from your mobile app through Oracle Mobile Cloud Service to the AuraPlayer API. And that's you actually up and running already. And the great thing we've had with customers is, because this is a kind of risk-free, you're not touching your code at the back end, you can pretty much have this up and running in a matter of a few days once you get that technology, because a lot of this is cloud provision, so there's nothing particularly you have to install. You just have to look at your use case, and if you can identify that use case, we can provision those services for you in the cloud to record, to host that service in the cloud, and then to call it through Mobile Cloud Service, which again is a cloud service. So there's nothing you have to say install or create up front. Now, having talked about this great technology, obviously the next step is that, looking for that comfort level of customers who've done that before. And we're very lucky that over the past couple of years we've worked with a number of customers who have some great stories. The first I'm going to tell you is the New York Metro Transport Authority. New York MTA, these guys are responsible for all the bridges and tunnels in New York. So if there's a crash on a bridge or a tunnel, what happens is an officer will go on site, he will stop the traffic, he will get his notepad out, he will take details of the crash, and that will be logged into a paper system. At some point later on that day or week, that paper note will be sent off to somebody in a back office who then types it into an Oracle Forms application. Now, fundamentally, the problem with that is that you're doing double data entry. So information that's logged on paper, and if you think about these guys, these are police guys, they're standing on a bridge, it's cold, it's windy, it's raining, it's snowing, they're riding with gloves on, and as you can imagine, quite often information is entered incorrectly into the back-end system, which, as I say, might happen a number of days or even a week or so later. So the system isn't perfect, and what New York MTA said was, well, couldn't we put that data entry into the hands of the police officers? And this is what we have here. If you see on the left of the screen, this was the original form system, and on the right is the application built using our mobile application framework, Oracle Mobile Cloud Service, and AuraPlayer. So from the screen on the left, we sat down with the customer and said, right, regardless of how this screen looks, and as you can probably tell, it's quite driven by the database schema, what are the tasks the officer has to do? And the officer has to do, first of all, he collects information about where he is, and then there's information about the crash, etc. And so rather than designing screens based on the schema, we could design screens that were based on the actual user's workflow. So that's how we designed screens. We then went through AuraPlayer to expose the data that has to go into these screens, exposed from forms using the AuraPlayer web service, and we connected those up from forms. So the data entry happens here on the tablet. Now what's quite interesting is, as you can imagine with working on a bridge or a tunnel, you don't always have cellular signal. So what this application does is that it gives you the ability to, as the officer inputs information, and it's pretty cool because on these Samsung tablets it has handwriting recognition or correction. They can take photos of the crash, things that they couldn't do before. So they've actually enhanced the whole experience, but also at the point they complete the data entry, they can store it locally on the device, and that's pretty useful because, as I said, if they're in a tunnel they might not have cellular signal, and at the point they do have a signal back again, that is then synced up through the Oracle, through the AuraPlayer web service, through Oracle Mobile Cloud, and then is pushed back into the Oracle Forms system. So all the validation, all the triggers, all the processing that we have in our Oracle Forms system works exactly as before because it's being pushed in through the AuraPlayer web service into Forms, and Forms knows no different that it's actually coming from a UI that's been developed in a different technology from what Forms is usually used. So that's a really nice example, and there's lots of great things that we got through Mobile Cloud Service as well. I mean, it's Oracle Mobile Cloud Service that allows these applications to work in an offline mode. Also, because all the calls are coming through the Mobile Cloud Service, it automatically gathers analytics, and so we can get information about how the users are using the application, where they're using it, what kind of errors are they getting, what kind of, is there a particular bridge or tunnel in which there's more crashes at. So they're able to analyze information about how the app's being used as well. So that's one example that we have. The second one we have is an example that we've been working with a customer, and I'll quickly show you this if I can, because rather than a mobile device, I've got this on a browser. And this is an application which I think is relatively typical in that we have a work list in Oracle Forms. So a work list is given to a driver at the start of the day. So it's printed out from Oracle Forms. He gets this paper copy. He then knows that he's got to visit 10 customers that day. Here's details about each customer that's printed out in his note, and he works out his route. Now, rather than going down that paper system, we developed this example here where this information on the left is the list of customers that this employee has to visit today. Now, that is information that has been queried through the AuraPlayer web service that's coming straight from Forms. But obviously, this is not a Forms user interface. This is written in technology JavaScript. So we've got some really cool features. So not only can we look at the list of information that's coming from the existing Forms system, but we can look at it and say, well, look, if we want to visit these customers in a particular order, well, we can reshift that. Now, this information on the left is coming from Forms, but obviously this information here, the route that the driver might take is based on Google Maps. So we're mashing up information through Mobile Cloud from Forms here and from Google Maps here. And here you can see the list. So number 1, I'm starting down at Bridgeport. And if I want to click on here and get information about this, this is information that's coming from Forms. So we have got, again, a mixture of data coming from different sources, because that's what the mobile experience expects, or that's what the mobile user expects. He doesn't really care that a map doesn't exist in the back-end system. It just makes sense that if you're pulling a list of data about customers that you're visiting, that we can mash that up with route information. So here we can have, we view information about this particular customer, and there we can even show directions or view further information. And this, again, is information from Forms, and you'll not be surprised to see this a kind of master detail style of information that's being pulled from Forms. So that's an example of a kind of mix of Forms and other technologies, and we've shown that through that web app as well. The last customer example is someone I was very proud to present with at Oracle World this year. Rogers is Rogers Group, a construction company who build roads, kind of heavy industry, those kind of things. And they use a lot of Forms applications, some of it based on EBS. And they have these very typical Forms applications that are used to do things like track work lists, track quantities of materials that are being used, and time cards. Now, as you can imagine, that a lot of this in the actual construction industry is being done on site, and it's been done on site in paper systems, which are then stuck in a folder, thrown in a truck somewhere, and at some point make their way to the office where the data is entered into the Oracle Forms system. And one of the challenges Rogers had is that they weren't seeing an up-to-date snapshot of time or quantities from their systems. It was something that really was, a couple of weeks out of date in some cases. So it made sense that tracking the time of workers on site, or tracking the quantities of materials delivered, could be put into the hands of the users that actually needed it. And they did this through Oracle Mobile Cloud Service and AuraPlayer web service as well, so that they were able to build specific applications for mobile devices that could be used by the users on site, but were still using all the back-end business logic that they had in a Forms application. It's just a new UI being built on their existing back-end systems. So that, broadly speaking, is the kind of outline of the potential of what you can do, the potential of bringing mobile, putting it into the hands of users at the point they really need it, and the technology, how we can do that. I think it's very important to emphasize that this is a very simple, low-risk opportunity, and I can say that because you're not changing or migrating or rewriting or touching or having to retest any of your existing code. That remains absolutely locked down and stable. But what you are able to do is pick, quite often at the beginning at least, small use cases that you can surface through mobile, and so really start extending your opportunity, your business through mobile, but do it at an absolute risk. And because the technology behind this is all cloud-based, that you're not having to install anything else. We just provision cloud services for you. that create your web service and connect through our mobile cloud service to your mobile app that you build in whatever technology you choose to do. And I really end up this presentation I did at Oracle World by quite honestly saying that there is no longer a technological barrier to adopting mobile here and succeeding with it. It really is down to the vision you have. And I think what's been quite enlightening that the customers worked with, like New York Metro Transport Authority and Rogers and a number of others, is that they've seen that opportunity, that vision of where putting information into users' hands is a big business improvement, but they've been able to do it with quite a low risk by just simply using web services and cloud-based services that we provision for them. So with that, there's a couple of pieces of information I'm going to leave up here. If you want to find out more about Oracle, then oracle.com/mobile, particularly if you want to have a look at some further demos or more technical information, we have a YouTube channel in which we have a number of videos that are dedicated to Oracle Mobile Cloud Service and the AuraPlayer solution. So you can, if you go to that channel, you can find those as well. I would absolutely love to hear if there's any questions there. So Mia, I think if we can open up the lines, if there's any questions, I'm more than happy to take those now.
Yeah, so everybody, there's a place where you could actually chat or ask questions. And I'll see here if there's a way to actually unmute. Yeah, so there's a way for you guys to actually raise your hands, and if so, I can unmute your lines for you guys to be able to ask questions as well. It could be about this, or if you guys have any, want to see if any of your existing forms challenges could be handled by this type of solution. Really, no questions. This is our first webinar without questions. Usually people, jump in saying, well, wait a minute, how do you do the forms triggers? Are you guys able to do things like WebUtil on the back end? Nothing curious? So here's our first question. Yeah, Barry, do you have a question? You could speak.
Yes, I did. Can you hear me?
Yeah, we can hear you.
Yes, hi there.
Excellent. My question was more around pricing and how the pricing of AuraPlayer compares to the pricing of MCS. I'm familiar with MCS, of course, but I just didn't know much about how the pricing and licensing works for AuraPlayer.
Mia, that's you then, I think.
Yeah, so actually the pricing, we have a joint packaging with MCS where right now actually we have what we call 30 days to mobile. It's a pricing where you can get an MCS environment, production and development, as well as an AuraPlayer production and development environment, along with help to build out your first app. So that package is being offered together with AuraPlayer and Oracle for $56K. So altogether, somebody yelled yay. but
Background noise, sorry.
That is something to yell yay about, so don't worry. But yeah, so usually AuraPlayer for one app license, we are also a annual subscription license. We have two methods of subscribing. You could either subscribe per app, which comes with a development and production license and about 150 users to start, or you could do it per forms server, and then it's unlimited users and unlimited users and unlimited apps. And the entry is usually between 15 to 20K is the smallest, and then for a larger, it's usually around 45 to 50K is for an unlimited server for development and production environment. So it's probably about a third of the price of MCS.
Okay.
Yeah.
Great. Well, thank you.
Yeah, but like we said, we usually are able to kind of create these packages. Actually, I could become the I'll become the presenter to show you guys the our newest. Where is it? Okay, good. Are there any other questions in the meantime while I look for our little campaign brochure here? Does everybody see?
Yeah, I can see that, Mia, thanks.
Yeah, so everybody sees our 30 days to mobile.
Yeah.
So if anyone wants to get a copy of this and start sending it out to their customers with pleasure, this has been actually quite incredible to see these applications really pop up in under 30 days using MCS, using AuraPlayer for incredible use cases. So people in either warehouse management, time reporting, or service requests is another big one. So
I think if I could add one thing, Mia, just for getting some more questions in, is that if, as I hope many people have got the vision for mobile within their company, regardless of its forms or anything else, I think what is really good about this solution is the low risk element to it, because what you can do here is just pick this, a small use case. I mean, because let's face it, mobile use cases tend to be what we call under this 2-minute rule. Anything more than 2 minutes shouldn't be in a mobile device. It's all got to be short, sharp use cases. So you can pick a very small use case. You're not having to build back-end logic. You've got that there already. It's something your business already has, but you're looking at new opportunities with it. And because we've provisioned this stuff in the cloud, as I say, there's no extra software to have to manage. So, if you are looking at mobile opportunities, this actually becomes one of the kind of neatest routes to picking it up, because you're, as I say as well, you're not touching any back-end logic or anything. That's all created. All your services are there. You just have to expose them, and then really all it's down to is building the UI side of things. And with mobile cloud service, I say we have a feature called Oracle Max, which is this no-code mobile app builder. So potentially you can get this stuff really turned around quite quickly. So mobile, if it's on your roadmap, this turns out to be quite a low barrier to go this way. Any other questions?
Any other questions? Really? Okay, well, I guess if nobody has any questions, we're going to be hearing from everybody how they're doing incredible mobile trials, and I'm going to jump right in with their customers to test this out in mobile, right?
Great. Well, I really hope you can all have a look at this. I see the videos will give you more details, and I'm sure if you reach out to Mia or myself, that we can help give you some guidance in this. So thank you all for attending. I hope it's been really useful for you.
Yes, thank you all for joining us, and there will be a recording available if anybody wants, and we will be able to send you guys any further materials. Feel free to contact us. Thank you all for joining us.